I think increasingly we're seeing a huge shift, we call it a big shift, in what companies need to do to be successful. If you think early 1990s and pre-internet, the dominant model that led to huge success for companies was a push model. It was basically make sure you predict or anticipate demand and get all the right people and resources in the right place at the right time to meet that demand. Huge companies built on that model, very successful. The internet brings into play something that was kind of in the background and now becomes more in the foreground. It's the notion of success depending on your ability to pull people and resources when you need them and where you need them, and to do that in a scalable way. So you're dealing not just with a few key strategic partners, but with thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands and millions of partners and participants that are being pulled out as needed, wherever needed. Yeah, it's, I think, a very interesting new development, which is the opportunity to pursue what we call leveraged growth. It's the notion of not of financial leverage, of adding debt, which got a lot of companies into trouble, but it's the notion of leverage in the form of reaching out and getting people with complementary skills and capabilities to support your growth and allow you to scale much more rapidly, much more financially efficiently than ever before. And that's a huge development. Well, it's very interesting. In the Center for the Edge, we've had research teams out actually in China and India looking at a whole series of companies that are not at all digital in very traditional physical product arenas, everything from agricultural products to apparel, where they are creating these scalable pull platforms and drawing out through a network of partners the resources they need when they need them. And they're doing this without any technology at all, or minimal technology. And what's really interesting to us is if you take the management techniques they're pioneering and developing and couple that with the digital platforms that are now available, that's where power really occurs. And so far, they haven't truly integrated yet. I think that there's a lot of possibility by combining these efforts. I think one of the reasons we have a very conventional view of India and China as basically succeeding based on wage rate arbitrage. That's part of the story for sure. They have some advantage in that regard. But I would argue their real advantage has been being very sophisticated in terms of these networked approaches to business. If we adopted that as part of our manufacturing operations, I think we could be a lot more competitive on a global scale than we have been. Part of the competition has been around business models, not just lower wage rates. But one company that we've spent a lot of time with is a company in China called Li & Fung. They're a very traditional family-owned business. They were, now they're public. They operate in the apparel business. Their customers are apparel designers. Basically what they do is say, just give us your fall line or your spring line of clothing. We'll take care of everything from sourcing of the materials to all the operations required to assemble the apparel and deliver it to a retail distribution center, and all the logistics involved moving across country borders on a global scale. They have 15,000 business partners that they operate with, and they coordinate very complex, time-sensitive, cost-sensitive activities with these 15,000 partners, but the result, because of all the scale of their network, is they can customize the supply network down to the individual item, whether it's a high-end wool sweater or a low-end wool sweater. It'd have a different set of partners because the specialization is so different. So they offer huge flexibility to their customers. Great learning opportunity because they're now pulling in the most specialized talent in whatever area of apparel operations are required. It's a significant benefit. They're now a $15 billion company, $1 billion, reasonably large, but much larger if you add in their 15,000 business partners, and highly profitable. They earn anywhere between a 30 to a 50% return on equity in the apparel industry, which is known for very razor-thin margins. the difference in terms of supply chain is our traditional supply chain operations have operated with very limited number of partners. The whole trend over the past several decades for Western companies has been to reduce the number of partners in your supply chain in the name of efficiency, because the complexity of managing so many partners was just overwhelming for most Western companies. What these Chinese companies have developed is a set of management techniques, modular, loosely coupled approaches to processes, extended business processes, that allow them to scale these networks in ways that Western companies would just find overwhelming. I think the issue in terms of adopting this new model is that most companies are still very tightly held in a very traditional push mindset. Their whole model is efficiency and scale within the four walls of their operations. That's the way they built their successful companies, and that's the way they continue to operate. This whole notion of reaching out and connecting to a much broader range of businesses. I'll give you one example. I wrote an article in Harvard Business Review almost 15 years ago now that the head of Procter & Gamble read, A.G. Lafley. He went into his management team the next day and said, we're moving from a company that sources all of our products from our internal R&D department to having at least 50% of our products sourced from other companies. Huge change in terms of their mindset and business model, but it took that one individual to say there's a different way of doing this and really move a culture that was very much a not invented here culture that said everything has to come from within our R&D labs.